Okay, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. This morning, I'm really thrilled to have as my guest a very old colleague and friend, Ted Wang, who's the founder of Stoked Advisors, also a board partner at Cowboy Ventures, and even a former lawyer. Ted, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, Ted, you've had a really interesting career. I've known you obviously since you were a lawyer, which I know was a very, very long time ago. So I'm really happy to have you on my program. Let me start by asking you, what made you transition out of law? I know a lot of lawyers from my days who did all kinds of other things, including venture capital like yourself, but tell me a little bit about how that happened and why you did that.
Yeah, I know some people there are some like lawyer bashing folks who used to be lawyers and say, I'm a reformed lawyer in a negative way like that. Like I loved being a lawyer. It was really a privilege of my life. And it was actually like I wanted to be a lawyer since I was in fourth grade. And
Hmm.
so, doing so fulfilled like my childhood ambition and it really was everything I hoped it would be. I was able to be a counselor for great companies. I learned a lot about how to navigate this like very complex path of being a startup and a lot of legal entanglements and worked with companies like Facebook and Twitter and Dropbox and Square and so serving those companies was really a joy and a privilege, and I consider myself super fortunate to have done that work. I guess there were sort of two things that drove me out of it. And made me decide. The first was just I had done it for a long time. I was a lawyer for 20 years, and I had sort of mastered it, and I just felt like my learning curve had flattened out. Actually, interestingly, when I made the transition, it was the year after I had lived abroad. So I went and lived in Argentina for a year,
Hmm.
which was fun. I took my family, and we lived in Buenos Aires, and it was this incredible learning experience. I had to learn a new culture and new customs and get used to the city. And my Spanish had to really improve. And so I had this amazing learning experience where I was just
Hmm.
every day was a new adventure. And then when I came back, I sort of was like, oh, I'm actually literally coming back to where I was. I was going to the same meetings
Hmm.
that I'd been at before, the same places. And I think I was just ready for something new. And then the second thing was a little bit of the business model that sort of drove me out. I mean, at the end of the day, as a lawyer, the business model is really client acquisition and client service. And so I was fortunate that I had built a very big practice and I had a lot of different clients. But then by definition, I just wasn't spending that much time with them. And it's funny, I was a transactional lawyer, and therefore my relationships were reasonably transactional with these folks, right? As when there was a transaction, they called me. And it was great. And that's the nature of the beast. And I liked it, but I really wanted to see if I could get deeper. I had the privilege of sort of sitting in the board meetings of a lot of the companies that I mentioned. Really, it was like an MBA from like a startup MBA from like the greatest business school on earth. I got to see folks like Jim Breyer and Mark Leslie and Roelof Botha, these incredible board members, and
Hmm.
entrepreneurs like Zuck and Jack Dorsey, and see how they thought about the world. And I really wanted to just take all of that information and share it with a smaller group of folks. And so I thought venture capital would be a good route for that.
Hmm. And so how do you kind of compare being a venture capitalist lawyer? I mean, was it really different? Was it fairly similar? Give me a little bit feel for that.
Yeah, super different. Really, really, very, very, very different set of skills. And I'd say like the core thing that's different is really the thinking.
Hmm.
And I became a lot less of a deterministic thinker. Like as a lawyer, you're really a much more of a probabilistic thinker. So as a lawyer, you sort of have to be like, okay, well, what is going to happen? Like here are the rules. And a lot of times you get asked these questions like, okay, well, we have this there's this rule and here's what it says, or this contract clause, like what does it mean and where are the gray areas? And you can sort of look at those things and have a pretty good sense of like, it's really about analytical reasoning and sort of like, okay, yeah, I can see how this is a little risky. That's kind of this is where this is the safe zone. This is the risk zone. In venture capital, everything became much more probabilistic. So it's sort of like, okay, how good is this team? How good is this market? You know, and then you sort of say, okay, well, how do I kind of stack rank all those things and then value them? And what are the different possibilities of things that can happen? Venture capital is one of the unique parts about it is, you know, you're always taking sub 50-50 risks, right? I mean, because obviously you make an investment in a company, the chances are it's going to go to zero. I mean, that's the most, you know, if we get into statistics, we can talk about the mode, if you remember that from your statistics class, right? The outcome that is most likely is zero. But when you win, you're not winning at 2x, you're winning at 100x. So you sort of have to try to figure out, okay, well, what bets have a chance of being 100x, and then, you know, a good chance of being, you know, 10x, and, you know, how do you sort of, it's a very, very different way of thinking. And I will note that my fantasy football results really improved once I became a venture capitalist. And it's funny because I just think I've started to bring this probabilistic thinking into everything in my life. And it was sort of interesting about like where that really shines in a number of areas.
So tell me, which skill set is better suited for Ted Wang? Was it the probabilistic venture capital thinking, or is it the analytical reasoning thinking? What suits Ted Wang better?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think I adapted to both. I like the storytelling. I have to catch myself. I think my weakness as a venture capitalist was that I could if you give me a bunch of dots, I'm good at telling a story. And the problem is sometimes that's my story and not the entrepreneur's story, which is, you know, it's not it, which is a bad. You really have to be listening to their story because that's what you're really effectively backing. And when I think about when you think about venture capital, that job, there are really two aspects to it, right? The first is the investment decision, right? Like, and there's a lot of flow before that because, you know, you have to source, you have to find opportunities first, and then you have to, you know, pick the ones you want to get, and then you have to win them. You have to convince them that you're the best helper. And then on the other side, once the investment is made, you have to be a helper. And for me, that was the part I liked the best. I love helping the companies. And as unfortunately, what I found and why I didn't sign up for the latest Cowboy Fund was, you know, I was really spending most of my time doing the former, and really 80-ish%. And that's the job. I mean, there's no one, everyone sort of knows it. And as I got, you know, deeper and deeper into it, and you know, I had a bunch of time, a bunch of competing concerns with my family. I wanted to spend time with them, and I was like, wow, I'm spending a lot of time doing activity, you know, this hunting and sourcing and picking, and that's not really how I want to spend. I really want to spend my time helping. And so I kind of get rid of all of that time, and that's what drove me to make the shift. And now I'm doing executive coaching full time, and now it's really almost all my time. I spend just helping entrepreneurs because my job is at Cowboy. I'm a board partner, so I'm responsible for all of the boards. You know, the companies in which we had invested, and I had been the lead, so able to continue doing that work. And now I'm just doing the similar work, but I'm just for hire, which is sort of cool and has a lot of positive aspects. I can get it more into if you want to go that direction.
Yeah, well, tell me a little bit. That's a perfect segue because I was going to ask you, why did you make this most recent move after being a venture capitalist, and how long have you been doing it?
Yep. So I launched the business this year, and I guess last year. Now it's a full. I'm a full. I think I started on February 1st last year. So yeah, I'm a full year into it. And that was really the reasoning. It's sort of, I think I've just been, you know, when you think about what the journey that got me from the law firm, is like, yeah, I want to spend more time with entrepreneurs, and I got closer to it. I think venture capital was a good step, but really what you're doing there is you're sort of bundling money with this advice. You're like, look, if you take my money, then you can get my advice, and that's cool. And I've really enjoyed that work, and that model is terrific, but it wasn't consistent with you know, what my goal was, which is really just to spend more time taking all that knowledge and experience I had, and really all the learnings that I had from watching these incredible entrepreneurs and board members, and I could really share that with more folks. And so the cleanest way to do it is the advising route. And so that's so I became a coach, and my coaching is a little bit less the way I think about Stoked. So the name of our company is Stoked Advisors, and the way we think about it is it's if you think about executive coaching has really become a thing in the last, it's been around for a long time, but I think it's becoming much more widely accepted. It used to be like, oh, I have a problem, therefore I need coaching. I think now a lot of wise entrepreneurs and folks in many different lines of business think, gee, having a coach is a great thing. And when you think about it, like Steph Curry has a coach, right? I mean, Steve Kerr's doing the stuff, like, my favorite analogy is you look at the great tennis players, you look at Djokovic, and like he has a tennis coach, right? Which is pretty amazing when you think like he probably has a pretty good grasp of the major parts of the game. And then when you really unpack what Djokovic does is he has all sorts of different coaches. He has a strength and conditioning coach, he has a psychological coach, and he actually has a tennis coach as well. And I think when you think about, I think in the future, we're all going to have many more coaches as information becomes like widely available, which it is now. The real question is, well, how do you synthesize it and apply it to yourself? And that's where I think coaching really plays that role. And so when I think about Stoked, what we really do is we're a lot less about strength and conditioning coaching, right? So I have an executive coach. And she's a lot more about how I can be my best self. How do I show up in the right ways to work? How do I work with people? She understands who I am and where my, when am I at my best? What do I do when I'm stressed? And I think that's more like strength and conditioning. I'm more like actually the tennis coach in the sense of I spend my time thinking like, how do I hire a VP of finance? Like, okay, how do I manage my board up through this thing? We're going to go fundraise. Like, how do I tell the story? What's this system and process do I use? When do I draw down my line with SVB? So it's really more like blocking and tackling business decisions, of course, with a lens to like, okay, I have to understand in every case, how does this person think and how do I help them to kind of come to the right conclusions as opposed to just sort of telling the answers.
Interesting. Then how are you liking it so far?
I love it. I mean, I honestly feel like it's really the culmination of everything I've wanted to do. And what I like about it is it's just so pure, right? And what I mean by that is, by the end of my legal career, I was really sort of bundling legal services with this advice, which is like, and it was like, look, I can give you this really important advice when it's important. Most of the time, the legal stuff is pretty cut and dry. And the saying was, Steve Graham, one of my partners, taught me this one. It's like any pilot can fly a plane on a sunny day. And I thought that was a brilliant metaphor in the sense of like, yeah, most of the time lawyers are doing stuff that's kind of cut and dry, except when it's important. But when it's important, it's really important. And then you really need someone whose judgment you respect and trust and someone who kind of knows what the hell they're doing. And now, so that, then I, when I took the next step in venture capital, I was really able to kind of narrow it down. So when I left Fenwick and West, I remember I had to produce a spreadsheet because when I left, we wanted to make sure all of the clients that I had been working with were serviced by the folks at the firm. And so we had to come up with a list, and I had something like 186 clients, I think is the number. So mathematically, I'm just not spending that much time with at least the median client, right? And so in venture, I was able to shrink that down to a smaller group. And that was and those relationships were and continue to be so rewarding. I mean, I was on the phone with one of our CEOs yesterday evening. It was just a great conversation. We built real mutual trust over a long time. And so I've enjoyed that. And now coaching just takes it. But at the end of the day, I'm still a board member. And I still, for him, it's my job to hire and fire him. And, my job to tell him whether or not he's getting a raise. I mean, those are the kind of the roles, and you have to play them, right? And most of the time you're highly aligned, but there are some different agendas and different incentives. In coaching, it's 100% in support of the entrepreneur, and that's what I think is so fun. Is like, and one of the things I've really pushed is you can fire me at any time. Like I really want, and I did it. So I'm now a year in, and I did check in with my clients at the end of the year, like, hey, is this still working? Do you still want to go forward? Because I only want to work with people who are getting value out of the thing. And I think eventually I have yet to get fired. I'm sure I'm sure it'll happen. But I actually think some people will graduate from me, which would be a really cool thing. It's like, yeah, I kind of get your mentality. I've learned the things I need to learn, and I'm ready to move on. And I think that will be, I think that will be a happy day for me.
How many entrepreneurs do you work with then now?
I think I'm at 14 right now, so I think that's a good issue. Like I want to be, I want to have enough availability, bandwidth where, generally speaking, the way we do it is it's a call every other week. So, you think, well, that's not that much, but except when it is. So it's like, yeah, that's true, except like, okay, there's a guy now who's doing some fundraising stuff. And, we talked yesterday and the day before that, and then over the weekend, and that's fine. Like that's what I want to do, just be available.
Now, do you find yourself either inadvertently or I don't know, your clients ask you about, commenting on legal stuff if they're trying to do a fundraise, like, oh, how should we handle this liquidation preference?
Pretty rarely.
Okay.
It's pretty rare, and I gotta say, like I've got to be careful too, because like of course I'm unlicensed at the moment, but also like the laws change, and that's one thing I think people. I remember getting this big when I was a lawyer. This entrepreneur, I remember exactly what the topic was. He was telling me like, no, this is wrong, and I was like, no, this is how we do it. He's like, well, in our last company, we didn't do it that way. I was like, yeah, that big building in DC with the dome on top and those two wings? Yeah, like people do stuff over there, and they came up with these new rules. And it was funny because he was really resisting my advice, and I was like, I was getting frustrated, and I was like, what is going on? I remember asking him. He's like, well, this is not how we did it in my last company. I was like, oh yeah, new laws since then. And I was like, oh, okay, well, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, okay, really? That's good. Oh, I didn't realize that. He's like, I just thought you were complicating things unnecessarily. It's like, no, Congress complicated things unnecessarily. I'm just fulfilling their wishes.
So let me ask you one thing that's this is sort of tangential, but not really. Do you find that executive coaching, one thing I've learned from this pandemic is that executive coaching can be done totally well over the phone. I mean, do you find that is the case? You don't need to see your clients in person. You don't need to do by Zoom. Tell me a little bit about that, because I think a lot of people, are surprised to hear that.
Yeah. So almost all is done by Zoom. Because I have coaches, I have clients on the East Coast, and that's just how it's evolved. I have tried to meet all of my clients in person, and I think that that just creates a closer a bond. And I would like to do more coaching in person. It's just I find that the issue is always busy executives, and they go, well, I can get I think what we're seeing too in the market is in the startup market, you see that there are a lot of companies are sort of remote first, and when companies are thoughtful about that, that's like remote first, except that we're going to have meetings once a quarter in these places, and then we'll get together. And there's so much hybrid too, like Tuesdays through Thursdays we're going to be in the office, and so when they do that, they're like, okay, well, if I had to prioritize what am I going to do in person, it's going to be team, not coaching. So so far that's the situation, but it seems to be working out. I mean, I am trying to do as much in person as I can, but the market hasn't been. My clients haven't been asking for it.
How do you see your business evolving? I mean, do you see yourself, is it possible to, leverage it and get people to help you, or this is really just a consigliere advising, it can only be you're limited by how much time you can spend? Tell me a little bit how you see this business growing.
Yeah, I think there are kind of two parts to it. I think the kind of startup parts, I really am serving two separate types of businesses, right? The first is really like, I've raised a Series A. I have a product that the market wants, but I don't know how to grow a business, and I need help. And so that involves, like, okay, what trade-offs do I make? Whom do I hire? Who do I surround myself with? How do I manage the board? That type of thing. That I think is going to be pretty hard to scale. It's just like, that one seems like it's gonna be just me. I think the IPO readiness, which I'm doing for some clients, is the one that may become more scalable. What I'm seeing is IPO readiness. I recently wrote a blog post about it, and what I noticed is when you're getting ready to go public, there are all these the law firms have these, great checklists, like here's all the legal steps, and, and then they sometimes integrate the other things, and like, here are the financial requirements. You go with the accountants, they really understand, like, not just, what numbers need to end up in these public filings, but also, who do you have to have on the team and what type of systems do you have to have in place. But the gap is really like, well, how do I make sure that my business is strong enough to manage when I, as the CEO and the CFO, are going to be super involved in this new work stream, right? The IPO process itself really chews up a lot of folks' time. And so that, I think, is something that people don't give a lot of time to. I think it's a lot like having a baby, like when there are birthing classes, like, oh, this is what's all going to happen in the hospital, and then there's they're all that, but there's not a lot of like, okay, and here's what happens when the baby comes home. It's like that. That's actually, for us, that was the hardest part. When our children came home, we're like, well, now what do we do? Dealing with all that. And so I think that may be something that we can build a little bit more of a systems and processes around ourselves. Because at the end of the day, that it's real, that the answer to that question of like, how do I prepare a company to be a public company, is it has to be like a machine. It has to like just sort of run where data is flowing to the right places. People have clear guidelines about how to make decisions, and everything is more mechanized. I think in helping people get there, we can also get more mechanized. So I think I might bring some folks on board, but we'll have to see if that product gets uptake. The downside is of convincing people of this fact is the companies that are going to go public are doing well. And so when they're doing well, they're like, oh, we don't need help. I think that's wrong, but we'll see.
So you've been a lawyer, venture capitalist. Now you're kind of an entrepreneur, advisor. Is there a fourth thing that you dream you would ever do in your life?
Well, I mean, there is actually. I also have a DJ career. So I play electronic music, and I've been doing that. I've been doing that for a little while now, and I fortunately am just about. I wish I could be promoting my new gig, but I had to cancel it. So, but yeah, stay tuned. I taught myself how to play how to DJ. This I really enjoy it. And I think this is related to the question you asked at the outset, which is, I think what I have found about myself is I love to learn new things, and like, getting to a point of, mastery. I mean, maybe competence is just there's so much joy in that. And so, yeah, learning to play music has been a really fun. It's been a fun thing to do. I really like just playing for my friends, which is most of my time. But yeah, I don't think that's a career. I'm pretty confident that my abilities are mediocre at best, but I do enjoy it.
Well, Ted, I really appreciate your taking the time. It's been a fascinating conversation. I've really enjoyed watching your career over the years. If you decide you're going to do something else, please come back and tell me about it.
All right, I will, Richard. Thanks for having me.
This is Richard Hsu and Ted Wang. Thanks.